When Liam told me, I added Morgan to the toast list. She's basically family. I smiled, poured him more wine, and texted her husband, we should talk. That sentence sat in my throat all night like a pill I forgot to swallow. We were at my parents' Sunday roast, my mom's hydrangeas sweating in a ceramic vase, my dad pretending not to pour a second generous glass of Pinot. My little sister Nora, who gets married in 6 weeks, was taste testing the caterer's canapes like a Food Network judge. Liam held court at the end of the table, sleeves rolled, easy grin, telling the story of how his mentor Morgan once saved their product launch by rewriting a pitch deck in an Uber. She's a legend, he said, picking up a deviled egg and winking at Nora. I figured she should say a few words at your engagement dinner, nor full circle vibes. Nora blinked. The engagement dinner next Friday? The one with just the bridal party and parents? Exactly. Intimate, he said, as if he hadn't just smuggled a grenade into the guest list. My dad gave that cheerful, confused chuckle he uses when he doesn't want to embarrass himself by asking for context. My mom dabbed at a non-existent crumb, scanning Liam's face like there might be fine print. And I, good fiancé, polite oldest daughter, said, of course. It'll be nice. The lie tasted like lemon pith. 2 weeks ago, the word mentor was just a LinkedIn noun. Then I saw the Venmo. A split charge, Soho House, just as cocktail glass, $182, paid on a Thursday. Liam had sworn he was heads down late at the office. When I asked, he said a client thing, shrugged, kissed my hairline, and asked what I wanted from the Thai place. I told myself it was nothing. Then I saw Morgan's public Instagram. She's a brand person, performs her life like a campaign. The black and white bar top, the 3 martinis, the same tiled floor as the members club I pass every morning on my way to the subway. And Liam, in the background of her story, reflected faintly in a window like a ghost that didn't know it was visible. I would have convinced myself it was a coincidence if it ended there. It didn't. The mentor had a wedding band. Her husband, Colin, appears sparingly on her grid, one anniversary post, a glossy kitchen remodel, a hiking shot where he looks like the kind of man who can fix things without watching a YouTube tutorial first. He had a small architecture firm in Brooklyn, the kind that hand draws plans before they open CAD. On Saturday, curiosity bloomed into caution. I toggled through Morgan's tags, cross-checked Liam's calendar. Late sprint, emergency review, board prep. The more emergencies, the more candlelit tabletops on her feed. Liam's gym nights started smelling like sandalwood cologne instead of sweat. He bought a shirt I didn't recognize and said it was an old one I'd just forgotten. I didn't forget. I've always been a person who notices what moves. At dinner, he kept building his charming narrative, brick by brick. You'll love her, he told Nora, cutting roast chicken into patient squares. She's known me since my first job out of college. She came to your graduation? My mom asked. She almost did, he said, smiling, like the truth could be shaped by warmth. Scheduling conflict. Nora's fiancé, Evan, looked between us like a golden retriever trying to understand chess. Isn't a mentor usually older? He asked, genuine. Experience isn't just age, Liam replied smoothly. She's brilliant. I speared a green bean and imagined it was a fuse. The thing about long relationships is that they build an internal language, how he cracks his knuckles when he's lying, how his eyes don't meet mine when he's replaying a script in his mind. He kept saying she, rarely Morgan, turning a person into a role, and he pushed the idea of her like a product feature. Benefits, benefits, benefits. When dessert came out, Mom's lemon tart that always leans more tart than lemon, Liam reached for my hand. Babe, you trust me, right? I want the people who matter to me in one room. That's all. I nodded. Of course. Then I excused myself, stood in my parents' pantry pretending to look for napkins, and pulled up the contact I'd found the night before, Colin W., Westboro Studio. His firm site listed his direct line. It felt intrusive, messy, but the feeling in my gut had evolved past off into architected. No one designs coincidences this clean. Hi, Colin, I typed. You don't know me. I'm engaged to Liam Carter. Your wife, Morgan, has been spending time with him. He just invited her to my sister's engagement dinner. If this is a misunderstanding, I'll delete this and you'll never hear from me. If it isn't, I thought you should know. I hovered over send long enough to hear Liam from the dining room telling my dad a story that belonged to both of them now. The fall he sprained his ankle, the nurse who laughed at his socks. I hit send. Back at the table, Mom slid the tart my way and said, tell me about the seating chart. I wanted to say, put honesty at the head table. Instead, I asked where she wanted the cake. Liam squeezed my knee under the tablecloth. Tender, practiced, the way he does when he wants me, soft and smiling. "You're the best," he murmured. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Unknown, this is Colin. "Can you talk?" I swallowed a mouthful of lemon and guilt. "Bathroom," I said, tipping my head toward the hall. In the powder room, I closed the door and stared at the bouquet print my mother has had since the Clinton years. I called. He answered on the second ring, voice low, cautious. "Hey." "Hi," I said, matching his restraint. "I'm Ava." Silence. Then, "I've suspected something. I didn't want to be the guy who, paranoid husband." A breath. "What do you have?" I told him what I could say without unraveling on the spot. The Soho House reflection, the recurring mentor dinners, the gelato receipt in Liam's Apple wallet on a night he told me he skipped dessert because he was being good. I didn't tell him about the shampoo, the one that's not mine, gentle sand in the drain like someone washed the beach out of her hair. Colin exhaled into the phone like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. She said she was consulting a founder late nights. She said he was 22 and helpless. Liam is 32 and calculating, I said, too quickly. I softened. "I don't want to hurt you. Or myself. But next Friday is my sister's engagement dinner. He wants to put her at my family table." He let out a small, disbelieving laugh. How generous. In the mirror, my face looked like I'd borrowed it from someone braver. I'm not ready to confront them at home. Not yet. But I'm done pretending I don't know. If you're willing, I think we should meet. Compare notes. Decide whether we show up together? He tested the word like a tooth. Together. He was quiet a long time. I could hear plates clink in his background, a TV murmuring sports. Then, tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Juno Coffee on Court Street. Done. I hung up and leaned my head against the cool wall. The hydrangea print watched me like it knew. In the dining room, Liam laughed at something my dad said. My mother refilled Nora's water. The house felt, for a minute, like it always had. Then I walked back in and saw it, Liam's phone face down, the screen edge pulsing. A message preview flashed before it dimmed again. Same table as last time? I smiled at my family, lifted my glass, and toasted to the people in the room. To the ones who show up and don't hide. To the ones who think they're about to. Colin was already at Juno when I walked in, hands wrapped around a mug he wasn't drinking, posture of a man who'd been taught not to take up space. He looked up, and in the tiny pause before either of us spoke, I felt the air shift. Not strangers anymore. Just two people standing at the same fault line. "Ava," he said. "Yeah." I slid into the chair across from him and set my phone face down, afraid the screen itself might betray me. He pushed a manila folder toward me, architect energy, tidy tabs, thin pencil line labels. I didn't know what would be helpful. Inside, screenshots, calendar prints, a credit card bill with yellow highlighter pooling over Hartley Hotel, rooftop bar, 2, on a Tuesday night. Colin tapped a page with the gentleness of someone who hates the thing he's pointing to. She told me she had a late brand workshop that night. Sent me a photo of a whiteboard with post-its. But the bartender at Hartley tagged Tuesday vinyl night in their story. And Morgan posted a boomerang of a record spinning. If you zoom, he did, the image granular and ugly, you can see the same sleeve Liam wore to your parents' dinner. The stitched cuff. I sat with the proof until it felt like heat. "I have things too," I said finally, pulling out my own folder. It's less curated. Receipts crumpled from trash salvage, screenshots of Uber destinations that weren't our apartment, a photo of our bathroom shelf with a new, expensive leave-in conditioner neither of us had ever owned. He paid cash for drinks a lot, but he doesn't remember the apps. His Apple wallet holds onto gelato like it's a diary. Colin gave a tired smile. "She's strategic. She knows trails." His jaw worked. But then she asks me if her black dress is too much for a mentee's demo night, turns sideways in the mirror like a teenager, and I think, what am I even arguing with? A hallucination? We built a timeline between us with pen and napkins, cups and sugar packets standing in for nights and lies. My Thursday sprints lined up with his Friday brand workshops. Her work trips matched Liam's off-sites. Little things added cruelties, matching restaurant charges at places that require a week's out reservation. A florist receipt the week I thought he'd forgotten our half-anniversary joke. Morgan's story with a cocktail called a new mentor. The kind of irony you don't notice until everything else has broken. "Why next Friday?" Colin asked finally. "Why the engagement dinner?" "Control," I said. "He wants to normalize her. If she's at my table, she's been blessed by the family. Like we're the ones being included." The preemptive rewrite. Colin nodded like he'd already had that thought in the shower, lost it by breakfast, and was relieved to have someone hand it back. If we show up together, it undercuts the script. The thought made my pulse jump. I don't want a spectacle. Me neither. He sat back. Public, but not theatrical. Just truth. If they choose denial, we don't engage. We place the proof. We leave. I imagined the room, my mother's pearls, Nora's paper-thin excitement, my father's eyes when he realizes his story about the ankle and the socks belongs to somebody else's mythology now. If we do this, we can't flinch. I won't. He said it softly, which made me believe him. When I got home, Liam was at the stove for the first time in months, a pasta sauce so fragrant it felt immodest. Big week, he said easily, like we had mutual bigs. I thought we could start it off right. He plated carefully, poured me wine, told me about a junior designer who messed up a kerning so catastrophically it shaped public into a word you can't print on a menu. I laughed in all the right places, and if my hand shook a little, he didn't say. The TV murmured a sitcom, the apartment smelled like basil, my life wore its costume perfectly. My phone buzzed, face down. He didn't look. I did. Colin, one more thing, Hartley has private tables. If they sat there, staff might remember a reservation note. I'll ask. Everything okay? Liam asked, twirling noodles, voice light, eyes watching the reflection in the microwave door instead of my face. Work, I said. Campaign budget thing. He nodded and launched into a monologue about mentorship, how it wasn't about power, really, it was about being seen. He used the phrase, clean boundaries, and I bit my tongue so hard I tasted iron. When he reached across the table for my wrist, thumb rubbing the tiny bone like he was smoothing me out, a little ache rippled under my skin, familiarity sharpening into something like grief. It is a special type of violence when kindness becomes suspect. Night made me a detective. I waited until he fell asleep, that soft, open-mouthed breath that made me ache once upon a time. I slid his phone from the nightstand. The Face ID trick only works if he's half awake. I didn't try it. I didn't need to. The lock screen lit with a preview. Tomorrow? 6, same entrance. He shifted, rolled toward me, arm heavy across my waist. You awake? He mumbled. I said, thinking about the toast order Friday. Maybe put your mentor before me? Better flow? The word scraped. He kissed my shoulder in the dark. You're funny, he murmured, smile in his voice. You know I love you, right? I looked past him to the ceiling where streetlight glow turned plaster into pale water. I know what you say, I whispered to the empty. He slept. Morning brought a small mercy disguised as cruelty. A calendar alert pinged for a gym. With M, he'd forgotten to rename the shared calendar back after briefly giving me access when we planned vacation. He snatched the phone off the counter like he could catch the notification mid-flight. I'm late, he said, grabbing his bag and that cologne I now hated. Don't wait up. He didn't work out. The gym uses a QR check-in and I'd asked once, innocently, how it works. Oh, it texts me, he'd said. That text never came. I walked 2 blocks to the corner where the rideshares linger. A silver sedan idled. A woman in a trench coat slid into the back seat, her hair a shade I recognized from 100 brand headshots. She glanced up just as the car pulled out, and the look on her face when our eyes met was not the look of a mentor seeing her mentee's fiancé. It was recognition edged with calculation. I didn't follow. Not yet. Instead I walked home, opened Liam's laptop. The password is the same as the Wi-Fi because it's convenient, and went to downloads. Receipts, PDFs, the detritus of someone who thinks deleting is erasing when it's just moving things to a different drawer. In the middle of pitch decks and mock-ups sat a boarding pass PDF for 2, a month old, BOSLGA, Sunday 2:15 p.m. Seat assignments A and B. He'd told me he was driving back, long podcast. I printed it and slid it into my folder. Colin texted mid-afternoon, manager at Hartley confirmed, Liam, private table, no photos is literally written in the notes. She remembers Morgan wore a white blazer. Thank you, I wrote. 2 words that weren't for him but for the universe finally coordinating. At 5:12, Liam texted, running late, mentor crisis loudly crying face don't wait to eat. I stared. The emoji felt crueler than the lie. I showered, stood under water so hot it blurred thought, and rehearsed not words, steady breath, empty face, the ceremony of leaving space for truth to walk in and sit. When I got out, my phone flashed. Nora, can you look at place cards with me? She asked, voice a happy drum. Also, do you think it's weird if we have a dessert table and cake? Evan says no one eats the lemon bars, but he is wrong. She didn't deserve to have her day polluted by any of this. I'll be there in 20, I said. We'll defend the lemon bars. Liam got home as I grabbed my keys, cheeks flushed, tie loose. Perfume clung to him, expensive, unnaturally floral. He kissed the air near my temple. Missed you, he said. Big week. I said. Don't be late Friday. He grinned, relieved at my normalcy, at my role. Wouldn't miss it. I smiled back. I have never been so still. On my way to Nora's, Colin called. One last question, he said. Do we want them to see us arrive together or separately? Separately, I said. Let them feel safe. Let them get comfortable. He exhaled, a steadying metronome. Then we give them the truth. I hung up, pulled into Nora Street, and rehearsed a sister's face in the rearview, the one that would not tremble, the one that would hold. By Wednesday, the lie had learned our routine so well it moved through our apartment like it paid rent. Liam started whistling again, low, happy, the sound he makes when he believes the road is freshly paved. I made coffee too strong and took calls with my camera off. Nora texted me photos of place cards written in her careful, slanted print. Should Liam's mentor sit near Dad? She asked, oblivious. He likes meeting impressive people. I typed, erased, typed again. Put her near the door, I finally wrote. Easier for speeches. It read neutral. It was strategy. That afternoon, I met Colin outside a print shop that still smelled like toner and old resumes. He handed me a narrow envelope, copies of the Hartley note, Liam, private table, no photos, 2 itemized receipts, and a photo of a white blazer taken from a distance that only mattered now. Manager said they always request the corner booth, he said. If we need to, we can place this without commentary. I slipped the envelope into my clutch, felt the cardboard settle like a new rib. We won't need theatrics, I said, more to myself than him. Just truth. He nodded. I called my therapist this morning and asked if I was about to become a petty person. He said, Rye. She said, no, just specific. We almost smiled. Almost. Back home, near disaster arrived dressed as convenience. Liam walked in early, humming, jacket over his shoulder. Phone's dying, he said, dropping a kiss on my head. Can I tether to yours? Need to send a file. Sure, I said, unlocking mine and passing it over. I'd turned off previews. I'd renamed Colin to see in my contacts like a teenager who thinks code names work. It would have been fine if my phone hadn't tried to be helpful. As Liam connected, a little gray bubble bloomed on the lock screen. C is typing. Then, before I could breathe it away, the message, Friday, arrive 7:10, wait in lobby. I'll text ready when they're seated. Liam's thumb hovered. He didn't read it, he couldn't, not without the passcode, but the name and timing sat there like a neon sign. Who's C? He asked lightly, too lightly, still watching the spinner on his email instead of my face. Caterer, I lied without flinching. Nora asked me to double-check the dessert table. Evan thinks lemon bars are controversial. He snorted. He's wrong. Lemon bars are iconic. He handed the phone back without looking again. Hotspot's up? You're a lifesaver. As he turned to his laptop, sweat broke along my spine. I texted Colin under the table, no names on lock screen. Emergency mode only. He sent back a single thumbs up, the digital equivalent of holding his breath with me. Thursday brought the rehearsal walkthrough at the restaurant. Nora wanted to see the room one more time in daylight, which actually meant she needed to sit in each chair and ask if it felt too serious. The private dining room at Basil and Birch glowed with a kind of grown-up warmth, honey wood, olive branches and stone vases, light pooling like they'd painted the walls with it. My mother held a seating chart like a general holds a plan. Where is Morgan? She asked, frowning at an empty name card. Should I put her between Liam and your father? Or is that political? I kept my voice level. By the aisle. I didn't add, better sight lines. We were arranging forks when the hostess appeared in the doorway, and everything inside me turned to static. Morgan walked in with that laugh people perform when they want the room to vote them charming. White blazer. Gold chain. Not a hair out of the story. Just scoping the space, she said, breezy, like she owned air. Her eyes landed on me with a softness so practiced it almost read as kind. Ava, right? I'm Morgan. She offered a hand. I'm so excited to celebrate Nora. Feels like family. Her palm was cool, light. In my head, I heard Colin's voice, just specific. Out loud, I said, thanks for coming, like I was thanking a vendor. Nora, sweet, unarmored, moved in for a hug. I've heard so much about you. Liam keeps saying you saved his career. Morgan tilted her head, faux modesty. Mentorship is mutual, she said, eyes flicking to me. My mother, eager to charm any potential ally, gestured to the head table. We thought you'd sit with us, but if you'd prefer. The aisle's perfect, I said, evenly. She'll need to stand for her toast. I let the word settle. Toast, like a match heading toward tinder. Morgan smiled as if we'd shared a secret. You're so organized, she said. Liam is lucky. The look we exchanged was a scalpel, no blood, just the idea of it. Then the hostess asked about bread service, and Morgan drifted, running her fingers along the back of a chair like she was testing the wood for rot. In the parking lot, as I tucked the seating chart into my tote, my phone buzzed. Colin, at Hartley. Talked to the server who remembers them. She says the no photos started after they got recognized by a colleague. I have her statement written. She's willing to confirm if needed, no names. I typed back, we might not need it. But thank you. I looked up and saw Morgan by the restaurant's glass, phone to her ear, watching her reflection watch me. If she suspected, she didn't show it. Her performance was seamless. But when she ended the call, she took a step in my direction. Quick question, she said, voice gentle. Do you prefer I keep it light tomorrow? Liam said you're not a fan of long speeches. I smiled the way you do at a neighbor's dog who might bite. Keep it true, I said. Length usually sorts itself out. Her eyes flickered, maybe a flinch, maybe a blink. Of course, she said. True. She walked away, leaving a trace of expensive floral in air that didn't consent. That night, the plan nearly blew again over something stupid, a pen. I'd been labeling envelopes with copies of proof, one for me, one for Colin, when Liam came home early and surprised me at the table. I slid my clutch closed a fraction too fast. The envelope edge caught. What's that? He asked, curious, not yet suspicious. Place cards, I said, keeping my hands casual. Nora's handwriting is beautiful, but she runs out of steam. He reached for the bag. Let me grab a pen. Wait, I said, too quickly. He froze. I pointed at his shirt. You've got something. I stepped in and dragged my thumb along his collarbone where there was nothing. I left a faint streak of foundation my face hadn't earned, and for once, my clumsiness saved me. He swore, laughing, and went to the bathroom for a washcloth. While the sink ran, I tucked the envelope under the tray of lemons on the counter like a magic trick I'd practiced since childhood. When he came back, I handed him a decoy pen and asked about a junior on his team with the kind of interest that makes men feel bigger. He forgot the bag. Friday, the day, arrived clean and bright, like the city had ironed itself. Nora sent a photo of her dress. Too much? Perfect. My mother texted me 3 different punctuation versions of 7 o'clock means 7 o'clock, and Colin wrote, I'm in a suit. Feels like armor. At 6:18, Liam emerged in the new suit he'd pretended was old, adjusting the cuffs like they were the point of him. He handed me my coat. You look. He searched for a word I might still accept from him and chose one from our first good year. Unstoppable. Let's be on time, I said, because punctuality is a kind of mercy. In the elevator, he checked his phone, slid it back into his pocket, then pulled it out again, restless. I might duck out to grab Morgan from the curb, he said, casual, like talking about picking up ice. Of course, I said, and stared at the descending numbers like they were a countdown. We stepped into the lobby glow. The doorman tipped his cap. Outside, rideshares jittered at the curb, and the air smelled like the night wanted a headline. Liam turned to scan the street. My phone buzzed. Colin, in the lobby at Basil and Birch. I'll wait. Text ready. Behind us, a rideshare door opened and a woman in a white blazer slid out, laughing at something the driver said. Liam's whole body angled toward the sound, the way a plant moves toward a window. 2 minutes, he said, already walking. He didn't see me glance across the street where a man in a charcoal suit stood under the restaurant's awning, hands clasped like he was holding himself together. Colin. Our eyes met across 2 lanes of traffic and a week of planning. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just nodded once, the quietest agreement in the loudest moment of my life. I typed, ready. Then I slipped the envelope into my clutch, smoothed my dress, and followed Liam into the kind of night that changes names. Basil and Birch's private room was already humming when we arrived, cutlery soft clinking, olive branches catching the light. My mother's laugh pitched half an octave higher than usual. The table cards made a neat little constellation. Ava. Nora rushed me, cheeks bright, the joy in her eyes almost painful. Okay, tiny thing, can you help me with the reel? Evan says we should get cute speech snippets from everyone for the grandparents. Like a video guestbook. A video guestbook. The word recording lifted the hairs on my arms. Perfect, I said. Let's set it up by the sideboard, clean background. I placed my phone on a little tabletop tripod I'd tossed into my bag for content, angled toward the aisle seat, Morgan's card face up, gilt edging catching the light. I opened the camera, hit record. No preview flashes. No red dot. Just a black screen that looked asleep. The mic would do the rest. Liam slipped his jacket off his shoulders, easing into host mode. Where's our star? He asked, scanning the door the way people do when they're counting their alibis. Right on cue, Morgan appeared, white blazer, soft gold chain, a smile calibrated to "we're all old friends." She moved straight to me like we'd rehearsed. "You look incredible," she said, voice warm enough to toast bread. "Thank you for having me." "Of course," I said, stepping aside so she'd take the aisle seat, the one my camera kissed. Liam took the chair on her other side. Perfect framing. I could have been a DP. My mother glided in with an iPad. "We're doing little clips," she chirped, thrilled to have a project. "Just say something sweet to the couple." "Oh, this is adorable." She panned across the room, the perfect cover, a room being documented. People smile for cameras, people behave themselves for cameras. People tell the story they want to remember. Nora dragged Evan to the bar station to taste the signature spritz. I leaned into the aisle, casual, palms open. "Before dinner," I said, "can we align speeches? Keep it under 2 minutes so the pacing doesn't die." "And, Morgan?" She tilted her head, soft-focused curiosity. Just for clarity," I said, voice light, like an event planner. "Since we're filming little snippets, how do you want to be introduced? Mentor? Friend? Former colleague?" "Just want to avoid confusion." Her eyes flicked almost imperceptibly to Liam. He gave the tiniest nod. "Mentor," she said smoothly. "Friend of the family through Liam." "Perfect," I said, the word like a needle slipping under skin. "And you too." I let it sound like a joke. "You've never, dated, right?" Just to ensure we don't accidentally create a weird montage. The table behind us laughed. I looked back at Morgan. She didn't. "God, no," she said, quick, practiced. "Liam's basically my little brother at work." She nudged his shoulder for punctuation. He grinned a shade too tight. "Right," Liam echoed, voice easy. "That would be messy." "Totally," I said, smiling like I accepted their reassurance as a gift. The camera watched. My phone quietly caught the room tone, the exact cadence, the exact language. "God, no. Basically my little brother. That would be messy." I glanced over my shoulder. Across the entryway glass, Colin waited in the lobby, posture straight, hands folded, a still frame in a moving movie. I sent a text under the table. "Hold." Almost. The owner, a woman with a salt streak in her bun, approached to ask about pacing. "We'll start with a welcome," Nora chirped, back at the table, obliviously radiant. "Then Ava, then Liam, then Morgan?" She looked at me for approval. "Great order," I said. "Oh, one thing." I turned back to Morgan, friendly again. "Could you mention how you know Liam for the video? Like, more context? Your first project together? The Office?" I cued the nouns I knew. "Of course." She slipped effortlessly into a practiced origin story. "We met at Solace when he was an associate," she said, hands framing the air. "I dragged him into a pitch he wasn't scheduled to be in because his eye for narrative is freakishly good." "Drag him into pitches," I repeated, nodding. "So kind." "And those late nights," I laughed lightly, "all in the office, right? I mean, who leaves the office anymore?" The table chuckled. Liam's knuckles went pale around his water glass. "All in the office," Morgan said. "We, keep boundaries." She corrected to present tense like a toe catching a crack. Keep, boundaries. Love that. My smile showed teeth. "Because we run into people we know everywhere in this city. Restaurants, rooftop bars, the Hartley." I let the name sit like a neutral noun. So embarrassing when stories collide. Something in her expression tightened and soothed in the same second. "I don't really go out," she said. "Not my scene." "Same," Liam added, too fast. "We're boring." My mother broke the thread, thank God, with a triumphant clap. "Okay, video scraps. Say something lovely." She aimed the iPad toward us. The players on my little stage straightened like students. "Liam," I said, holding the smile. "Say something to Nora and Evan." He looked into the lens. "That guy I once believed, you two are proof that love is a verb." He meant it. That's the worst part. "Morgan?" I gestured. She leaned in, poised. "Nora and Evan," she said, "I am honored to be here as a mentor and friend of the family. I wish you a marriage full of transparency and," she smiled, "clean boundaries." Her gaze flicked to me, testing the edge of a joke. "Clean boundaries," I echoed. The camera drank the words. If documents are evidence, tone is indictment. The owner called for places, servers started their choreography. Liam stood to help my grandmother with her chair. He is good at this, the caring when it's witnessed. As he turned, I tapped his elbow. "We okay?" I asked lightly, a partner check-in. The kind of line you can play back later with a pause. "We're perfect," he said, eyes warm. "You know me." I looked at the lens that was still, silently, knowing him. During the first course, Nora made the welcome toast, voice wobbling, the room already soft. While applause washed over the table, I reached into my clutch and slid the narrow envelope to the edge of the runner near Morgan's wine glass. The handwriting faced up, Liam, private table, no photos. She didn't clock it yet. Good. When it was my turn, I stood with the mic and found air. I'm the sister who has cried about napkin rings twice this week, I started, laughter easing the room. I told a little story about Nora's fourth-grade play when she forgot her lines and ad-libbied honesty instead, and how the audience cheered louder for the truth than they would have for the script. So, I looked down the table at my sister. May you build a life where the truth is the default, not the performance. I sat. Liam squeezed my hand, feeling seen by words that weren't for him. Liam, the owner, nodded. He stood, charming in his ease, and delivered jokes polished on the walk from the Uber. He toasted the family who raised the best woman I know. The room adored him. Up next, Nora beamed, Morgan. Morgan rose, the room a stage she had rented with her confidence. She began. When Liam was 22, she gave anecdotes that belonged to them, curated into inspiration. He's the most loyal person I've met, she said, eyes shining. When he believes in you, he shows up. Shows up, my father repeated under his breath, taking a sip. She raised her glass. To Nora and Evan, may you have the kind of love that, she glanced into the middle distance, found the word, prioritizes. Applause. Crystal kissed Crystal. I watched her set the glass down on the envelope without noticing it, the corner peeking out like a flag. I picked up my phone from the sideboard and stopped the recording. 31 minutes. Voices clean, denials crisp. I opened the shared album Nora and I used for wedding stuff and added the clip with a neutral title, B&B Toasts, Take 1. My fingers didn't shake. I texted Colin, now. He responded with a single dot, then, ready. If part 3 was the countdown, this was the click before detonation, the part where the bomb learns its job. I slid the envelope fully into Morgan's line of sight and watched comprehension try to form and fail. Across the room, the maitre d' opened the door for a tall man in a charcoal suit. Conversations thinned at the edges like a storm front moving in. Liam's shoulder blades tightened under his jacket. Morgan's thumb found the ridge of her glass and pressed hard. Evan, Nora whispered, confused, whose? I stood, calm as ceremony. Before dessert, I said, voice level, one more guest for the video guest book. Colin walked in, and the room rearranged itself around the truth we were about to make permanent. For a beat, Basil and Birch forgot how to breathe. Colin stood just inside the doorway, a polite storm in a charcoal suit, and the room did that thing rooms do when the story changes. Glances ricocheted, laughter thinned, forks stopped midair. Hi, he said to no one and everyone, voice calm enough to set a metronome. I'm Colin, Morgan's husband. The word husband landed softly and then cracked like ice. Morgan's hand fluttered toward her necklace, then settled, trained not to fidget. Liam's smile tried to hold. He failed by a millimeter. Nora blinked, sweet and earnest. Oh, wonderful, more family. She meant it. My chest hurt. I rose, unhurried, like this was on the run-of show. Colin, I said, welcoming him with the kind of grace that makes people question their own judgment. We're filming a little video guest book. I gestured to the sideboard where my phone had stopped recording but the iPad my mother now held had started. Would you mind saying a few words later? Of course, he said, eyes warm on Nora. Congratulations, really. He meant that, too. I pulled out a chair near the aisle, near them. Sit, I said gently. You're just in time for a game. Morgan's laugh was half a second late. A game? A harmless one, I said, the way people do before it stops being harmless. Nora's idea for the real, quick-fire questions so the grandparents get to meet everyone. I smiled down the table. 2 rules, short answers, and honesty. Sound good? Liam lifted his water glass. We love honesty, he said, and if there was a god for irony, it smiled. I nodded to my mother, who filmed like it was her job. Okay, I said brightly. We'll start easy. How do you know the couple? People took turns, Evan's college roommate, Nora's work best friend, my aunt who taught 3rd grade and had opinions about reading logs. Laughter smoothed the room's edges again. Then I turned toward the aisle seats. Morgan? I asked, voice pleasant. How do you know Liam? The camera watched. Phones appeared like little night-blooming flowers. Cousins love a moment. Work, she said smoothly. I'm his mentor. She looked straight into the lens. He's family to me. Beautiful. I tilted my head. And to clarify for the edit, ever dated? She caught the trap, smiled anyway. No. Ever traveled together? Her lashes lowered. No. Dinner, just the 2 of you? Outside of work? Not that I can recall, she said, casual, careful. We usually go as a team. Bars? I asked, light like I was recommending one. Rooftops? The Hartley's vinyl night? A ripple passed under her skin and was gone. I don't even know that place, she said, a little laugh. Sounds loud. I nodded like I was learning. Gifts? I asked. Mentors get holiday gifts. Anything memorable this year? She considered. Wine, maybe. A thank you card. And you, Liam, I said, turning. Ever buy Morgan jewelry? A birthday? Work anniversary? He shook his head, disappointed I'd even ask. No, not appropriate. The camera hummed. The sound of lying is remarkably similar to the sound of breathing. I flashed Nora a conspirator's grin. Okay, lightning round. Finish the sentence. Our relationship is professional, Morgan said. Boundaried, Liam said. I turned to Colin. And yours with Morgan? He held her gaze and smiled like an apology to himself. Marriage, he said simply. 3 years. Wonderful. I clapped once, gentle. Next, favorite date night as a couple. I aimed at Nora and Evan first. They performed their adorable ritual at the dumpling place on 8th. I kept the rhythm moving. My parents said jazz and a walk by the river. Then my eyes returned to the aisle. Morgan? She inhaled, looked to the ceiling as if cataloging. We don't really date night, she said carefully. We do team dinners. I'm sure that's boring. Same, Liam added. I'm an old man. People chuckled. My father studied his napkin like it might answer something. Last one, I said, all sugar. Is there anything at all, you wouldn't want in the video? Anything that could be misinterpreted? This is your chance to guide the edit. Nothing, Morgan said, crisp. I'm proud of our story. Same, Liam echoed. Nothing to hide. My mother lowered the iPad, pleased. That was adorable, she said. Your grandfather will eat this up. Great, I said, palms smoothing the table runner so I didn't clench them. Then we're clear. Silence didn't fall, it crept. The kind where conversation continues at the edges, but the center goes still because it knows it's the center. I slid the narrow envelope, Liam, private table, no photos, another inch into the light. Morgan's gaze snagged and held. Her fingers hovered above it like heat. What's that? She asked, voice as neutral as a composure coach. A seating note, I said. From the Hartley. The manager was so helpful. I kept my tone airy. Said your no photos request started after a colleague saw you two at the corner booth. She remembered your white blazer. A muscle moved in Liam's jaw. Why would you call them? His voice aimed for wounded and landed on annoyed. For the edit, I said. You're both so worried about boundaries. I wanted to make sure we didn't accidentally cut around context. I glanced across the room. Colin, are you comfortable on camera? He folded his hands, polite. Absolutely. Perfect. I turned back to my mother's iPad. Mom? Rolling? She lifted it. Rolling. I placed my phone on the table between us and tapped voice memos. The red line crawled. Calm settled over me like a fitted coat. Quick clarifications, I said, cheerful. Morgan, you said you've never been to the Hartley? Correct. Never to the rooftop at the Hartley on a Tuesday. Never vinyl night. Never corner booth. Never a no photos note. She didn't blink. No. Liam, I said. You said you've never bought Morgan jewelry. Not pearls. Not a bracelet that matches a pair of earrings. He forced a smile so hard it almost whistled. No. Never traveled together, I said. Not Boston in March. Not a Sunday flight 2:15 p.m. seats A and B. He shook his head. No. Never reserved a private table under your name. No. Never used mentor crisis as a reason to be late. Ava, he said softly, appealing to the version of me that used to save him, this feels specific, I finished, still smiling. I know. I looked at Morgan. And you don't know the Hartley at all. Correct, she said, evenly. Is there a point, or are we just context, I said, for the video. Across the table, the owner hovered politely with a tray of desserts she could not in good conscience deliver. The maitre d' watched from the doorway with a professional's blank face, the expression of someone who's seen engagements and exits in the same hour. I turned to Nora, who was white-knuckling her napkin, eyes flicking between us like she'd missed one episode and now the plot was sprinting. Hey, I said softly. We're okay. She nodded, but her throat worked. I looked back at the lens and at the two people who'd spent months rehearsing a different story. My voice stayed pleasant. Thank you for your answers, I said. They'll be very helpful later. Later for what? Liam asked, and that's when I saw it, the fear behind his teeth. Not guilt. Not love. Risk. I slid a second envelope onto the table. Liam recognized the logo on the first page, airline font in the top right corner, the crisp edges of a boarding pass. Beside it, I placed a printed Hartley receipt, a florist invoice, a jewelry store charge, and a photo of a white blazer that looked like it believed in itself too much. I didn't turn them fully. I let them sit like weather on the horizon. Morgan's eyes flicked over the kindling and then to me. "This is unhinged," she said softly, almost pitying. "Ava, you're spiraling over coincidences." Colin's voice didn't rise. "We both called them," he said. "They remembered you." "Then they're mistaken," she said, a small, incredulous laugh. "Do you hear yourself? This is a witch trial." "Great sound bite," I said. "For the real." Liam leaned in, elbows on the table like we were about to negotiate a lease. "Let's not do this here," he whispered. "We can talk." "We are," I said, still friendly. "On camera." My mother's hand tightened on the iPad. My father's stare had the sharpness I know from stories about him and suppliers who tried to cut corners. Evan reached for Nora's hand under the table. My grandmother, bless her clarity, tilted her head as if listening for the click of a trap. "Last chance," I said, and the room heard that it was. "Anything you want to revise before this goes in the family video?" Last call for context. Morgan met my eyes and chose a hill. "No." Liam swallowed. "No." I nodded, grateful in a way I'll never admit to either of them. "Thank you," I said gently. I tapped the screen to stop the recording, slipped the phone beside my plate, and finally pulled the documents fully into the light. The room pulled a breath it had been holding for 6 months. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't stand. I just turned the papers so the dates faced them and placed my finger on each line like I was reading bedtime stories. "March 15th, I said softly. "Boston. 2 seats. Row 4. You told me podcasts in traffic." No one moved. Cutlery rested like a chorus of quiet no's. I slid the next page forward. "Hartley. Private table, no photos. Tuesday vinyl. Your cuff in the reflection." I glanced at Morgan's shoulder. White blazer. Colin didn't speak. He simply set his phone beside mine and opened a note, times, places, screenshots printed and taped in neat columns like elevations. He didn't push them forward. He just let the shape of diligence sit between us. Liam inhaled, steadied. "Ava," he said carefully, "these look coincidental. I can explain Boston." I moved a colleague up a flight, took his seat. The hotel comped. My father's voice cut across, low and even. "Son, please look at my daughter." Liam did. His mouth closed. His hands folded. He waited for me to be the woman who saves him from himself. She didn't show up. I nudged the jeweler's invoice into the light, not fully, just enough for the logo to be undeniable. "You said tonight," I murmured, "you've never bought Morgan jewelry." Morgan's face was still. "If you didn't know her, you'd call it composed. If you did, you'd recognize the calculation." "That could be anything," she said. "Clients. Perks." Colin's eyes stayed on her. "It's not a perk," he said quietly. "The saleswoman remembers you. She also remembers the size adjustment. She called after I asked, in case it was fraud." Something loosened around the table, the smallest exhale as the room learned which way gravity went. "We are not doing this," Liam whispered. He wasn't threatening. He was pleading with the story. "Not here. Not at her dinner." I nodded once. "We're not fighting," I said. "We're clarifying." Nora's napkin shook in her lap. The owner held her tray in the doorway like she'd decided the desserts would wait their turn in another life. "Earlier," I continued, voice steady, "on camera, you both said, never the Hartley. Never traveled together. Never jewelry. Brother at work. Boundaried. If I play that back next to these and the emails from the Hartley manager, it will sound like what it is." I met Liam's eyes. A record. He rubbed his temple like a man who wishes headaches were eligible for forgiveness. "Okay," he said, exhale thin. "I had a drink at the Hartley. With a team. I didn't know someone wrote my name." "The server did," I said. "She wrote it because you reserved." "Fine," he conceded, grasping for smaller lies. "We went once." "But Ava, this picture you're painting is specific," I said gently. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, he looked older. "Can we go?" he asked. "Somewhere private?" "No," my father said before I could answer. "Quiet. Final. You can leave. Privately." My mother set the iPad down, hands careful, as if she were lowering glass onto a shelf that might not be there. "Nora," she said softly, without looking away from the table, "would you like to take 5 minutes in the kitchen?" Nora nodded, stood, whispered something into Evan's shoulder that made him squeeze her fingers. They slipped out. The room watched the door shut on a small, pretty sound. Morgan smoothed the edge of her napkin. "Ava," she said, tone almost tender, "I'm sorry you feel blindsided. But this, curating a case, this isn't healthy." "It's sober," I said. "It's the opposite of curating." Colin finally turned a page. A florist invoice, 24 white ranunculus, delivery to a hotel, initials on the note. He didn't speak. The paper did. The quiet wasn't empty, it had shape. It held my grandmother's small breath, my aunt's hand hovering over her glass, my dad's stillness, the kind that used to scare suppliers who claimed missing pallets. Liam pressed his lips together until the color faded. If I say I'm sorry, he tried, if I tell you it was a line we didn't mean to cross that got away from us, then I would ask, I said, not unkindly, why you built a calendar to sprint across it. He swallowed whatever speech came next. He looked at me like I'd stepped off a train he still wanted me on. Here's what's going to happen, I said, voice level but not cold. You and Morgan are going to leave quietly. I will send you, tomorrow, the clip where you make your denials. I will send you the receipts. If you want to contest any single piece, you can do that through counsel. Liam's jaw worked. Counsel. It's a clean word for an ugly process, I said. But we're going to keep this as clean as possible. For Nora, for my parents, for the grandparents who will still watch that video and cry. I turned to the owner. Would it be possible to move their coats to the hall? She nodded, grateful for instruction, and slipped away like a shadow doing its job. Morgan's composure thinned for the first time. You're recording this? She asked, glancing at the iPad, the phones, the room that had turned into a witness. Just the part where you said no, I answered. Just the part where you wanted clean boundaries on camera. Colin finally looked at me, then at Liam. We're not yelling, he said quietly, like a decision. We're not naming names at work. We're not making a scene. We're just not carrying this for you anymore. Liam blinked once, slow. So that's it. That's it, I said. You chose it. We're just agreeing with you. The maitre d' arrived with 2 coats draped over his arm. He held them like a ritual and set them on the empty chairs as if to bless the absence. Liam stood, hands shaking, slid an arm into a sleeve that had fit him better an hour ago. He looked at my father, then at me. Ava, I said softly. Not sharp, not cruel. Keep what's left of the dignity. He nodded, a man accepting a verdict from a judge who won't gloat. He glanced once at Nora's empty seat and then left, the door sighing closed behind him. Morgan remained half a beat longer, like she was waiting for the room to remember a reason to adore her. None arrived. She lifted her chin, eased into her coat, and followed the path Liam had made. Silence held its breath, then exhaled. It wasn't relief. It was an acknowledgement. I picked up the envelope, slid the papers back in, tucked them into my clutch. My hands were steady. Across the table, Colin did the same, closing the note on elevations with a quiet click. My mother sat first, took the iPad in both palms, and set it face down. She looked at me with eyes like mine and said, simply, thank you for not letting them torch the room. The owner appeared as if summoned by calm. Shall I bring dessert? She asked, voice soft, professional, a kindness. Yes, my father said. Then he turned to me. Ava, would you say something? To bring us back? I stood without standing tall. Nora will be back in a minute, I said. We're going to celebrate her. No one has to choose a side tonight because there aren't sides. Just facts, and us. I looked at the doorway where voices whispered on the other side, my sisters, Evans, steadied. Sometimes, I said, the kindest thing you can do in a family is tell the truth gently and let people do their own math. The door opened. Nora stepped in, eyes a little glassy but set. She walked straight to me and pressed her forehead to mine. Thank you, she whispered, and this time the room did exhale, soft, human. We sat. Cake arrived, lemon bars bright as small moons. People ate because that's what you do when your heart is learning new rhythms. You give your body something simple to understand. Colin lifted his water in a small, private toast. I touched my glass to his. Not victory, not vengeance, just acknowledgement of a thing finished quietly. Later, as we walked out under the awning, the city sounded like it always does, sirens far off, forks on plates, a bus sighing to a stop. Normalcy resumed its job. I sent Nora the link to the family album and deleted the voice memo. I kept the clip of their denials. Colin paused at the curb. You okay? He asked. No, I said, and then, eventually. He nodded like an architect approving a line. Eventually is a good plan. We said goodnight. I turned my face up into the cold, letting it close the last, small tremors. When I finally walked home, I didn't rehearse what I would say when he called. I didn't plan a speech. Quiet is a decision you make more than once. At my door, I texted Nora, I love you. Tomorrow is only yours. She sent back a photo of the lemon bar, a bite taken, powdered sugar on her lip, a heart. I leaned my head against the wood, let my shoulders fall, and opened the lock.